And while Chris is doing that, so he is joining us today from Cerebral Blue to talk about their no-code GenAI platform.
Great, awesome. Thanks. Wow, it's backwards again, just in time to switch everything up. Our summer break was a little hard on our organization capabilities here. So the folks online right now are just seeing the wrong version of the presentation. They're seeing the presenter view, so we're just trying to correct that.
Share the right thing. Yeah. Let's see. So it's just sharing the PowerPoint. Let's share the whole screen.
Which is funny because we did the opposite last time.
And it worked. So let's see what happens now.
Do you have anything sensitive in your presenter notes?
No.
This isn't the worst experience. I
don't. No, there shouldn't be any notes that are popping up in there, and if there is, they're not going to be. It's not going to be like G14 classified.
Okay, cool.
Like
I mean, it's pretty large for the folks dialed in. It does look like we have a couple of folks now. Are you all right if this is the presentation view? We're just having a little bit of technical difficulties. Is it large enough for folks to see? Yes. All right.
Okay.
And we got a thumbs up too. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you. All right. Well, let's jump right into it. First and foremost, thank you to the AWS Portsmouth user group for having Cerebral Blue up tonight for the October meetup after the summer hiatus. So for those in the room and those who are joining virtually, thank you for coming. My name is Chris. I'm the Director of Alliances and Partnerships at Cerebral Blue. So we are an AWS ISV partner headquartered in Miami, Florida. I was also the one who's responsible for having built our alliance business with AWS from square one. So software that you're going to see in action here in a little bit, I was responsible for actually going through those initial steps with AWS and getting it on the marketplace and through foundational technical review and all those things. But technical salesperson by trade, I spent a bulk of my early part of my tech career at IBM. And then I've got a little bit of data analytics software experience. I got the opportunity to join Cerebral Blue and help a couple of people I had worked with in the past venture into this new frontier of GenAI that I'm sure you guys have seen has been iterating itself like on a weekly basis, it seems. But we have software as a service on AWS Marketplace. We do also deliver our software as dedicated container images that drop right onto AWS EC2 servers. We can do on-prem, we can work with other clouds as well, but for the sake of this conversation, it's container image on EC2. So we're not limited to just talking about calling SaaS from the marketplace and calling it into your AWS environment via API. And it's also important to note that our software also integrates with other parts of the AWS cloud. It's built on top of AWS, and it needs other elements of the AWS cloud to run as part of a solution and to do the things that I say we can do and that you're gonna see here in a little bit. So we've been in business for a couple of years now. The product that we built on top of AWS has existed out in the ether for about a couple of years. And what we have seen in the 2-year journey of jumping into generative AI, really from a market challenge standpoint, come down to these four areas. Now, this has all been to date aggregated based on stuff we've heard from clients and objections and things that we hear from all the other prospects out there. So number one challenge, probably have heard this from every client we have and every prospect that we get as well. Number one challenge that users and clients have with adopting generative AI and large language models and doing anything tangible in production is the quote unquote lack of control over large language models. These things are trained on bazillions amount of data, and they really love to give outputs, regardless of how you prompt them, regardless of what you do with them. They're like, I have to answer whatever it is that you're saying, whether you're BSing me or not, right? And from an enterprise standpoint, that's a little bit of an issue because businesses want to point their domain data, their sensitive data, can we do things better, faster, stronger, competitive advantage, all of that, you name it. And can we leverage this technology to change the way we work and to do different things in a variety of areas? And so things like LLM hallucination, misinformation delivery, and PII or PHI or sensitive data being leaked by a model because somebody tricked it, or having that sensitive data from an enterprise actually go into the underlying training of the model itself, that's a no-no. That can't happen. It's a number one showstopper for any enterprise that's wanting to try to do something tangible with Gen AI in production based on what we see right now. On top of that, you hear a lot about, well, generative AI is new, like not a lot of people understand it. It requires, our best engineers and time and resource effort and specialized skills to actually be able to do something even in a POC concept. And so the direct quote that we get a lot of times from prospects and even clients before they become clients is, this just takes a lot of time and effort. And we either have other projects or our best people are on more critical business operation things from like a down the stack IT perspective. And like, we just don't have the people or the time to throw on this. So sorry, it's like the 8th thing on our list. Maybe we'll get to it in a year or two, right? When we have some time. Third one is scaling. So this is kind of a parallel with the second market challenge, but common thing we hear is, well, everybody's got ideas. Like, yeah, like we got thoughts, or we got use cases, or maybe flip it in a better sense. Like, we got a problem that we think we could solve with generative AI, but we can't get the ideas out of the parking lot, right? We have an issue taking what we want to apply to our business with Gen AI and being able to do it quickly, easily, trustworthy, transparently, and be able to control it and scale it, and not waste a lot of time and effort in order to do so. And so we hear going from idea to production is hard. And because we think it's hard, we're not going to waste any brain capacity trying to focus on it right now. Last one's cost visibility. None of this stuff is free. Maybe one day, but not free right now. And so if you can get through even these three, like, okay, you can control LLMs, great. Don't need a lot of time and resource. Okay, great. You can take an idea and get into production in days, weeks time frame versus months and years. Okay, that's good. Well, the business needs to know what you're doing and how much it's costing them to actually operate something that's actually very difficult to understand. Large language models, yeah, they're pennies on the dollar to get going, but it's really hard to track what a business is actually going to consume from an LLM standpoint. Token utilization is not a one-to-one thing. Different models require different amounts of tokens based on certain kinds of inputs, and it's never a linear thing. And then you got to be able to see what exactly is the model or models I'm using doing against the data that I pointed to. I need visible proof of either data health or data hygiene or discrepancies in data that I've plugged in or fed into this model. So our data admins or data engineers have a better idea of what they need to do to improve that data or scrap and adjust based on what the model is telling us on our overall data health. And then, well, how do I measure what I'm spending and using? And then do I have the ability to be able to cost compare models, what I have and maybe what else is out there? And then, oh, if I'm able to do this, can I string multiple models together for various functions or tasks? Or can I swap out a model in a given solution and I don't want to have to alter any script in that application to be able to do it? So over the last 24-ish months or so, of course, tons of objections and other challenges out there, but it really boils down to these four based on our experience. There are silver linings to this, though. Here are common use cases that we have with our clients and users in production today. And as of now, at least as of mid-October in 2024, I would say the number one use case out of all these is this one right here. Employee productivity, boosting operational efficiency, saving time, putting generative AI into line of business people, non-coders, putting it into their hands to be able to actually work with the data they need to work with on an everyday basis and make it more actionable, whatever the purpose or need that it is. And then even from an IT standpoint, can you slash development time by 50, 60, 70, 80, 90% with trying to do something to give back to the business from a generative AI standpoint? And then get into some more common ones. Text summarization and intelligent document processing are huge ones. Compare and contrast documents. Make me a new document based off documents we already have. RFP, RFI writers is a huge one right now. Like, can you take information from these documents that we've already answered or that we've sourced to our business and then use them to be able to answer a new one that we're trying to respond to, or make a new one because we want to solicit business from somebody. And then you get into customer care and like human care and support and things like that. So digital experts, ask me anything, kind of, intelligent chatbot type services are big ones right now for us. And then things like, so like help desk and support tickets, whether it's a B2C scenario and a customer reaching out to a business, or it's more of a B2B thing. Business has product or products from other company and are trying to take the load off of human agents to answer detailed, nuanced, maybe complicated questions that could be very finite based on the product or service or thing that you're talking about, and free them up to be able to focus on more higher severity case type use cases. You get the fun ones, you get content creation, you get content recommendation. I feel like that's almost a given with generative AI things. You got to be able to do something along those lines. And then integration points to other enterprise applications or services or processes that maybe aren't just a chatbot. So we talk a lot about contact center software integration, whether it's through a bot on the front end of it, or it's already got some kind of chat widget where you can API it in to that contact center software. So like Connect, for example, with Amazon or other contact center software that does happen to run on AWS. And then I touched on it a little bit, but we integrate into other things outside of just databases and corpus of knowledge. So that's things like voice. Like we have a few clients who have our solution integrated into the front end of their their phone system, make it easier for the live agents to handle crises, whatever it might be, maybe better intake person information, appointment scheduling and rescheduling, use cases like that. And then we do also integrate into SMS and text message platforms, as well as enterprise messaging services like Slack. So just finding low-hanging fruit, tangible ways to help organizations realize some return in a quick fashion from generative AI, but give them the ability to do some hard things, make it much easier out of the box, and do some other things that others may not be doing right now. It's definitely a builder and buyer landscape for this with generative AI. AWS loves to talk about this spectrum of where do you live on your consumption journey? Are you a builder or a buyer or somewhere in between? And this generative AI stuff right now is no different. I'd be curious to see what talking about this in this regard, maybe a year from now, maybe 6 months from now, what does that look like? But where we see it right now is you've got everything from Fortune 50, Fortune 100 entities are like, we have legions of technical people. We are the top 1% in terms of early adoption on the innovation curve. Give us the tools. Show us where the developer tools are. We'll throw our technical people at it and make me something pretty, sort of thing. And then you go all the way to the other end, where you got buyers who are buying subscription-based software as a service for what I would like to call like open AI wrappers. Basically, other smaller companies trying to monetize ChatGPT, throw you something that will give you a couple of bells and whistles and look pretty cool, but not really give you the enterprise level detail and control and visibility that an organization actually truly needs to adopt something GenAI wise in production. And then you get all the in between, like, hey, can we build something stemming from a platform, PaaS-based service like Amazon Bedrock? Can we, we bought these tools, or our business is already, in a vendor agreement with some provider. It's like, well, we have their tools, so we actually need somebody to just build it for us because we already have these and we don't know what to do with them. And then you get your quote unquote hybrid. They're right in the middle of, we build what we can, but then we're looking for that glue, right, for our application or service. What are some integrations that we can infuse into what we've already done? So we're not backtracking per se, but we're able to do some things that maybe we couldn't do with our staff and still realize some value for what we're trying to build. Security and legal, another big one that comes up in every single one of these conversations with generative AI, and it's we're outside of controlling LLMs. These are normally the things that come up right after that. Like, well, can I make the thing do what I ask it to do? Can I control the LLMs? Can I mitigate business risk on me and my general counsel or legal or security infosec people? Can I mitigate risk of hallucination and misinformation based on our own data? Can I mitigate this, and can you show me where I can prove that to the IT leaders if they ask? Eliminate sensitive data or PII data from leaking, and basically, do I have the ability to remove inputs containing sensitive data elements, whether you put it into a question or you try to ask something in a creative way to extract some PII elements from a corpus of knowledge in a RAG action? And do we have things in place that can auto detect, flag, and mask and hide, and maybe even wipe out PII related inputs or potential extraction or RAG action on impact, so there's no risk or threat to our business of data falling into the wrong person's hands internally or being leaked to a potential bad actor outside our walls.
I'm sorry, what's RAG action? The acronym there.
RAG, retrieval augmented generation. So that's basically triggering an LLM to go crawl for some relevant information through a data set, and not only be able to bring it back, but what you guys will see later on, can you prove the factual accuracy of it? And can you pinpoint where exactly that came from? So yeah, retrieval augmented generation is RAG.
Awesome, thank you.
You're welcome. Regulatory compliance and keeping law and policy data updated. This is important for any organization, and it only gets more severe the bigger and higher up on the food chain they are. And really looking at it as a compliance enforcement tool. Can we use generative AI to basically improve our data hygiene from a legal and policy and compliance standpoint? And can we make it easy on our non-coder general counsel people, and then the handful of people who man the data for the general counsel? Can we make it easier on them to be able to verify, improve specific legal information that they may need for whatever reason? But can we also help them very easily and quickly identify discrepancies in that data? Because certain organizations, they have to update legal stuff monthly. It could be even weekly, depending on the entity. And these people can't be wrong about stuff. Being wrong about one thing might cost them millions of dollars in an instant. And so make it easy to be able to identify discrepancies in that legal or policy data as well, using things like semantic analysis and provenance and match scoring of a retrieval augmented generation LLM based output against what data they have available for the LLM to draw on. And then the enterprise observability. If businesses are gonna buy generative AI and really seriously invest in it, they need proof. They need to see what LLMs are doing against the data that they point to it. They need to be able to measure quite easily what's being used. What does it mean from a token spend standpoint? Can I correlate that to what it costs for me to actually have this given LLM? And then can I see all this and something I don't have to open the terminal to figure out? So where we're finding ourselves really helping the AWS user base and client community from a generative AI standpoint is we're making LLM governance and guardrails easy for one user or at the enterprise level, allowing users to be able to control and prove that they can control how Amazon Bedrock LLMs are going to perform against whatever data that they feed to it. We're helping reduce the resource effort and the time that it takes for a developer or maybe even a line of business SME type person that's needed to test and scale and build and maybe even ongoing management of a generative AI solution that's on AWS, but doing so without the code involved. And then save that time with testing and scaling generative AI ideas and use cases into production. And everything that we talk about with people is in a days and weeks time frame, not months and years. And then see behind some corners of something that is a bit of a challenge for a lot of people to understand is, how are Amazon Bedrock LLMs performing? It's what data that you point towards them and gain that proof in what they're doing, and see things like token utilization and LLM costs, and even be able to cost compare models that are either that you already have today or ones that you may look at investing in the future for solution optimization, performance improvement, whatever the case might be. So a lot of really a lot of what our business talks about and the market challenges and things that we're helping solve for really get funneled into this solution that we built on top of AWS and released about a couple of years ago, which is called Neuralseek. And so before I actually show anything regarding Neuralseek, think of this as like middleware for a generative AI backed application or solution. It's the thing that would live between whatever enterprise data that a business would point towards it, database, corporate knowledge base, other enterprise app, content management, ERP, whatever that might be, and the front end user interface that an employee or some in person to the business would be interfacing with it. So that's Lex from a bot standpoint in the AWS world. We integrate with Q Business as well, so you can leverage that as a front end and basically augment Q for Business's functionality with Neuralseek, and basically allow a user to take one or multiple LLMs, Bedrock or elsewhere, bring them down to the corporate data layer, not the other way around like what OpenAI is based on, and make enterprise data more actionable, whatever the use case or outcomes you might be looking to accomplish with GenAI. So more of a buy versus a build, but it's an integration platform. It's a multi LLM or multi-agent LLM orchestration type platform. So cut out a lot of the time and dev effort needed to actually build something, but needs to bring along other elements of the AWS cloud. And I've already mentioned a few to be part of whatever the application or solution it is that's being built. It's just, one cog and a wheel, so to speak. Mentioned Neuralseek is built on AWS. Here are some of the services that our business use to actually build Neuralseek in production today. So of course, it's run on EC2. We use Lambda from a serverless function standpoint. We got S3 from cloud storage. We use CloudTrail for config files and logs and things like that. We have, at least for the Neuralseek application, we have Elasticsearch on AWS for that, but you're going to see other knowledge base connections that we have as a part of the platform when I go through the demo portion of this. And then we use key management service. I'm sure there are other elements of the AWS platform, but I know these are at least the core 6 that were used, and then the development team did what they did, and here it is. Did mention Neuralseek integrates with other elements of the AWS cloud. So I have a SaaS-based architecture diagram here to show you kind of the Shangri-La of what a multifaceted AWS cloud environment would have with Neuralseek involved in it from a called in via API standpoint. So this would be the only piece that really lives outside of a client's or a user's AWS cloud environment, and you'd be subscribing to it through something like AWS Marketplace, and then just calling into the service via API and managing the subscription from your AWS Cloud Management Console. But then when you get into the other elements that could be native within a user's own AWS cloud environment, Neuralseek has the ability to touch everything from data that's maybe residing outside of the cloud, whether it's on-prem or some other environment, and having it networked in via direct connect or a VPN type service. But if not, indexing data or storing data in S3, for example, then indexing that bucket or buckets into a knowledge base index service. From AWS, we support Kendra, OpenSearch, Elasticsearch, and also knowledge bases for Bedrock if a client's gone down that route. Serverless function, of course, with Lambda. And then from a front end UI standpoint, we can do custom web custom front ends, and clients oftentimes bring their own. It's like, can I just layer this over this tool? But from an AWS standpoint, Q and Lex are the 2 big ones. And then theoretically, you could take Neuralseek, integrate it into Lex, and then pull Lex into Amazon Connect if you got an enterprise contact center software deployment. And then of course you'd have Bedrock there as well, at the very minimum from a model subscription standpoint. So really
everything in that middle square, the customer's managing. So when we talk about Lex or Connect, the customer is still developing those bots, and then they're just tying into your API over on the left, or are you folks developing the bots for the interactions back and forth?
The former. Yep. Couple examples of cool use cases or success stories that are live today. So this is probably the coolest use case that we have in our entire client base. There's a large US based telco. There's only so many, so I'll give you time to figure out which one did this, but they're leveraging Neuralseek combined with EC2, Amazon Bedrock, large language models, and they're combining sensitive financial data on corporate performance that's yet to be released to the public or gone over in the earnings report. They're combining that with corporate comm data, past earnings call transcriptions, and they're funneling all this through a no-code workflow that was built within Neuralseek, and they're synthesizing all this data to basically spit out an earnings call report on the current quarter financial performance and a C-suite summary and briefing for the entire C-suite of this large telco. And so basically them running this data through our platform to get this output is the thing that gets extracted from our platform and PDF and sent to them as the like, hey, you need to review this ahead of sitting on the table with the mic, and the Associated Press is peppering you with questions. And on top of that, to be able to take the information from past earnings calls and then like, hey, based on our current quarter's financial performance, the AP is probably going to ask you about XYZ PDQ. Here's a little blurb on what you need to be prepared for on that topic. So when that question comes up, you're prepared to answer it. So, you know, a pretty cool use case that a very big, you know, very data secure and sensitive business is using us in production for today. That they, you know, the last couple of quarters, they've been, the C-suite's been up there doing their thing, but they're actually backed by the output that our tool provides them. Looks more like this. It's definitely it's a dedicated environment type situation. They're definitely not calling our service from SaaS via API. So they have huge EC2 servers. They have like the P4D 24 XL, like the huge, like the ones that are like $33 an hour, like huge compute, because they're running Bedrock models and all these other things in that isolated environment, and they're just burning through them to, you know, with their development and testing of things. And so they have a container image of our product natively on that EC2 server, and they've got, you know, got that data, their earnings data, corp comms and stuff, and they're pumping it in through a VPN and then putting other stuff in S3 and dropping it into a knowledge base and running the workflows like that. We're going to go to the completely opposite end of the success story size and client. So this is a health tech startup that is also using our solution on AWS, coupled with their own curated domain data that they've compiled and using an Elasticsearch on AWS knowledge base, and specifically with some Bedrock large language models. And what they're trying to eventually do is they're trying to create an application that you and I could go to and to be able to query medically verified information on a variety of healthcare conditions and topics, and not only get relevant pieces based on what the user is asking, but also provenance and proof of like, you asked this, and here's the video or the periodical or the interview that came back. It came from this doctor from this facility at this time, this day. So really as a means for people to, you know, take better control of their health and, you know, actually get some factual stuff back on maybe conditions they have that they're concerned that they're going to have. And they didn't have a way to do this before. They were curating all this verified information, but they had no way internally of, well, if we start querying against that, can we prove the factual accuracy of that data? Can we pinpoint where it's coming from? And initially, you know, they couldn't, and they thought themselves, okay, as more and more we curate more and more of this data, it's going to make it harder and harder on our people to manually search this stuff. So they use it as an internal thing today for their employees to be able to verify the medical information before they, send it off to the knowledge base and or, send it to a in person. But the goal of this is they're going to put a front end over it. And what they're trying to do is create this application that they'll sell to healthcare insurance companies so that one day it's a benefit option for us, when our annual benefits sign up that, hey, maybe you can sign up for, or you have access to this service through your company that allows you to query in a retrieval augmented generation fashion and then some against some medically verified information and not only be able to prove it, but use it to better improve your own health and wellness. So completely different scenario than the large telco, but also using the same kind of enterprise grade capabilities like provenance and semantic match scoring and verifying factual accuracy, and then using governance and guardrails if there is sensitive health related elements, especially as they get into the more individual user base, and maybe there's some PII from that individual user that's coming up as well. A little bit different of a solution architecture on this one, smaller, agile startup that they don't really care right now about any kind of dedicated install. So they're using it in a SaaS fashion today. And the reason I have Bedrock out here is because the version of the product they're using has a model already baked into it. It just happens to be a Bedrock one. So that's why that's there. And then everything else they have in their own AWS cloud account. So they are not networking any data in from on-prem or somewhere else. It's all native in the cloud. It's a lot of documents and recordings and things like that. So they're dumping it all into S3 basically, and they're indexing this stuff into an Elasticsearch KB and then layering Neuralseek on top of it with a Bedrock model to be able to actually query the information faster and validate the accuracy. And if they start getting questions on conditions or topics that they don't have information for, it makes it easier on them and their executives to go source that out from various medical facilities or professionals to be able to generate more of that data. Okay, here comes the
Next screen switch. So
Yes.
what you have, you should be able to see Zoom on my laptop over here. So you should be able to get a sense for what the people online can see. While you're trying to juggle that, I'm going to throw a question at you as well. When we were looking at the solution and architectures, and the last one was, fresh on my mind, where they had their S3 bucket and then they had a Lambda in front of it. I think you had other solution architectures where your service talks directly to the customer's S3 bucket. Is that accurate?
I can show you where in Neuralseek you could talk directly to an S3 bucket.
I guess my question is going to come around that sort of interaction point, and just cost wise with S3, like data going in, data going out, things like that. When you're pulling from the customer's S3 bucket, and maybe you are not pulling from the S3 bucket, maybe I'm incorrectly speaking, but does the customer have any insight or control on how much their AWS bill is going to be increased by you folks getting that data? Or is it it's pennies on the dollar for what they're getting, and it's not a conversation point?
Yeah, I mean, that's more on the client and how much data that they're storing in S3 in their environment and how much they're indexing into a KB index, or that they're trying to call on directly, which I'll show you where that would happen within Neuralseek. So yeah, I mean, the only costs that a user is going to incur specifically from a Neuralseek standpoint is the hourly charge to have the product. And then when we execute, or when a user executes retrieval augmented generation actions, which I'll show here in a second, that's an incremental charge every time that happens. So that's just cost native to using our service. But what that's also going to entail is, well, you're paying monthly for a knowledge base to have data indexed into, and then you're paying pennies on the dollar for S3. And obviously the price of that grows as more data goes in there. And then it's the incremental charge to have a model plugged in there. But that also comes down to usage, right? Because it costs next to nothing to get a Bedrock model, for example, right? It's just, well, let's use it 100 million times and see what that looks like. But not all models are like that. There are some that are more expensive right out of the gate than what the Bedrock ones are.
Is the thought to have some sort of FinOps capability where you can set almost like a budget or threshold? Since we're.
Kind of what I was thinking,
Yeah.
yeah, is that something
Sure.
that's already?
It's so that could be done, but I'm gonna show you guys where that would happen
Okay.
and where that executive would need to be like, okay. When we get to this point or that point,
Or even yet, right, existing integrations to existing other FinOps tools. That'd be another way to skin it.
yes. Okay. Gotta figure this out, Chris.
Looks good on Zoom.
Perfect, okay. So now we're not gonna talk, we're gonna show a little bit. So I've dropped you guys in to a Neuralseek demo environment. This is running on AWS right now. This has an Elasticsearch on AWS knowledge base. It's got some basic product documentation on ourselves as well as some other AWS services, just not a ton, but enough to like be able to show you a couple things. And then the model that's being used in this demo right now is Claude V3 Haiku. But when I get to that point, I'm going to show you some cool things that you can see in terms of stringing models together or just toggling back and forth on certain models if a business ends up subscribing to multiple. But where we are right now, and again, this user interface is really for that SME data admin, data management person. This is not the UI that the sales and the finance department would get access to. But you could layer over that front end UI, whether it's you make it look like Q or you make it look like Lex, and allows people to execute these RAG actions in the seek function where we are right now, as well as execute workflow evaluations from a service we have called Maestro, which I'll show you guys what that would look like on the back end of things. So we're in Seek right now. This is where retrieval augmented generation happens. Basically, put in an input, send the model to go do its thing, crawl through the knowledge base, bring me something back useful, right? So I'll show you what that looks like. There's gonna be a little bit more additional detail that you get every single time this happens. So if I did something like, large language models work with Neuralseek. Okay, so Claude did its thing, crawled through the knowledge base of data that we have in the Elasticsearch knowledge base and brought us back an output pretty quickly, right? You see the response time there, but there's gonna be some more detail that's shown. And here's what's a little bit different than just, hey, I'm prompting an LLM to bring me back something. First part's the provenance. I mentioned that word a couple of times. The provenance is the color coding that you see right here. This is visible proof of relevant snippets of information in the knowledge base that we sent Claude to find based on the user's question and bring back and fuse together to create this output. So if I turned it off, it's just input equals output. Maybe it's accurate, maybe it's not entirely sure, may not be able to pinpoint it. When I cut it back on, color coding comes back. The different colors denote different sources. So obviously the more colors there are, more sources that were used or more source jumps that happen, less means less sources, less source jumps. This is all clickable as well for that data admin SME. So I could click on one of the highlighted areas and it rolls me down to what we call the knowledge base context. So we do RAG, prompt the model to bring back an output. We prove relevant snippets of information, and then we prove on top of that, well, where do all those snippets come from? I need to see what the source was, where that little bit came from. So this one that I clicked on, you see is right here. We're indexing a lot of URLs. So that's why URLs are coming back for the sake of this demo. But you see that exact highlighted piece from that subset of text in that source that Claude went and found and said, yep, that works. Let's bring it back. You see the color coding pop up again on the left-hand side to delineate the sources. And then you see the percentage of that given source that was used every single time in a given output. And if somebody needed to click into that core source directly to review it further or make a change or get rid of it or whatever they need to do, they can do that through here as well. So we're showing the relevant snippets of information where they came from. If like you need to get in there further, here it is. We do stump speech as well, and a user could put that in the configure tab. Here, it's basically the last line of defense for an LLM to bring something back before we start to get into the realm of potential hallucination and misinformation and things like that. There's also more to that. So we do semantic match scoring. I've mentioned that a couple of times as well. That's really broken down between these two statistics here, the knowledge base coverage, the confidence score, basically saying coverage. We have enough information here to support what this person's looking for. And then the confidence, is that information that's available good or not? So in this particular example, 100% knowledge base coverage because I purposely asked something that I knew was there. And so pretty easy to find. And then the knowledge base confidence, even though it's a low number, it's above the minimum confidence threshold that I have set up in this demo. And so as long as you're getting something back that's not like 2%, 1%, 0 sort of thing, that means there's some source available within the knowledge base index or whatever data you got hooked up to this to draw on from a large language model standpoint. We'll go even further than that. We'll do a semantic analysis summary of every output that's generated. So not only do we do everything that I said, and then we say, how well did the knowledge base cover it, and is the information good enough or not? We're going to give you some math behind it to show you how good that output was or not. So you see some things that you already saw on the main screen: semantic match score, source jumps, standard deviation, top source coverage that was used, like the actual true total coverage of the knowledge base. And then, and this is important for human in the loop interaction with leveraging generative AI at a business scale, is things like unattributed key terms, numbers, maybe full on remove sentences from a given output. These are early indicators for the business to be able to see whether the model they're using is potentially hallucinating or not against what data they've made available. Think of this like a direct relationship on a graph. You don't see any of these, that means, okay, model's likely not veering off its tracks. You see a ton of unattributed things that should not be there based on what you're looking for. Odds are likely high that the model is trying to hallucinate, but that's also going to be reflected, and your semantic match score is probably very low because the model couldn't find anything relevant to bring back based on what you're looking for. Well, the fun part. Let's try to make this give me some BS or misinformation a little bit. Let's see. Trying to think of an off-the-wall question. It's not quite fully fall in Atlanta, so I like to look out here and see what happens. Okay. So why is the fall foliage in New Hampshire the best in all of New England? There's nothing really relevant in the knowledge base about foliage or geography or anything like that to support what I'm looking for. In a typical model prompt situation, using something else like OpenAI or whatever, model's going to run the races and try to give you all sorts of stuff, even like Wikipedia or whatever, to try to tell you like, this is the best in this particular instance. And why it's different with Neuralseek is Neuralseek is not letting a model which is trained on tons of data, maybe outside of the enterprise, right, to do what it typically wants to do, which is, you're going to give me an input, I'm going to go run and find you something, for better or for worse. The model will only bring back data that you point to it. And if there isn't data available to support what a person's looking for, Neuralseek's not going to let the model just give you an answer. It's going to cut it off after it tries to do its crawl and realize, okay, we're not hitting any relevant information. We're not hitting any minimum confidence or warning confidence here. So instead of letting it run, you're going to get something like basically what started here. Is, fortunately, I don't have enough information to fully answer that question. It's because there's nothing there for the model to point the model to bring back. And so it does its thing and it comes back and says that no, I'm sorry, there's nothing there. So now if this was a situation in the business where it's like, oh, wait, we do need to have some information on this and this happens, it makes it easier for the business to put in information to support this given topic, or if they saw a discrepancy in what the model delivered based on what somebody's looking for, it makes it easier for them to remove it or adjust that output in the future so they can handle giving data on that given topic in the future. And this is also supported by the fact that we have a low semantic match, pretty low coverage and confidence score. Really what's happening is it's just pulling common words from stump speech and in the documentation. It's not pulling me any like core information on fall or foliage or even New Hampshire in this case. And then we got a lengthy semantic analysis summary telling you all the things that are off with that given output, and then be able to prove it by coming in here and seeing there weren't a lot of source jumps. It hopped between two things that had some relevant words, not specific words, but just like relevant sentence type words. And then uninterpreted terms, you start to see things like the words that were in the question: foliage, fall, New England, New Hampshire, things like that. So all this stuff gets tracked in two different areas. One in governance, but I'll show you guys curate here in a little bit. So governance, that's where that's enterprise observability and visualizing the cost and data health and model performance. This is where all that happens. So it starts off pretty high level where you're just looking at, are questions being answered when people ask them? Is there prompt injection going on? We have HAP filtering and PII filtering and detectors on there as well. So is your GenAI solution able to actually stop from answering those given questions based on parameters you've set up from happening? And then we track the intents or top intents as well. So they all pop up here in their own color on the right-hand side, and then the solution will track the frequency of that. So you can see how often, how frequently are people looking for information on given topics, but then also see the average semantic score and the knowledge base confidence. So it makes it easier for that data SME, as well as that maybe the executive signed off on building and buying something of, well, what kind of return are we getting, and are we realizing any kind of data improvements, and is it saving you time and effort to improve on our data or make our data more actionable for whatever user is trying to access it. You get full semantic insights as well. So you'll see semantic confidence, or total semantic confidence. You'll see longest source phrases, top source coverage, total coverage of the knowledge base, answer lengths, standard deviation. Source jumps, you'll see things like cache hit. So users do have the ability to put or to save heavily frequented outputs and just cache them. So you can save money on LLM usage by just, if a really common question comes up and it's like, I really want this output to be given for that given topic, you can do that. And so it'll pull it back from the cache as opposed to executing a full action with a large language model.
What options exist to say invalidate a cache where the right answer today is not the right answer tomorrow?
Where you would see that is in the curate tab of Neuralseek. Actually, I'll just jump in there and show you guys. So this is the other area where all the intents and the topics get logged and categorized, basically. So if I click on a given topic, like the one I just prompted, all the gray text, for example, are different versions of the same input that I made. And so if you were trying to accelerate bootstrapping some kind of very deep conversational AI service and you want to get going really fast, you could basically allow list all these adjacent questions and then download the intents and pump them into a virtual agent that way. So you save a lot of dev time there. But your specific question on, well, right answer today, what if it's not the right answer next week when we change the information, but the model's still pulling something back? So human in the loop again. If you see this happen, so say it's a week from now and we put in information, but this situation happened. Two things you can do. You can click on this little I button and just remove the LLM generate output, clear, just like that. Or if you don't want to do that, but you know the information's been updated, you obviously find it much faster, but you can click inline to this. Something like this, right? Okay. Let's put me on the spot here. I want to see what this looks like now that I did it. So say that's the right answer, right? That's what we want to tell people.
Nice. What's the source on that? Just your back end? Like,
Yeah. Well, no, look.
oh, it's your intent. Okay.
Yeah, because
Trained answer. Yep.
yeah, because I went in there and trained it, pulled right from the cache, verbatim, right? Little silly, but still point across. Like,
And it gives someone a point to say, oh, this was, someone must have hard coded this. You know, they know that it didn't come from a source that, yeah, it still tells what they need to know, so.
and then what do? You know, those data management people, they go comb through the data on that topic, so they know exactly what they're looking for. And be like, okay, do we have something here that at least says this, or is there something else we could add so we could go back into that given answer and put something.
Yep. So one thing that I'm really fascinated about, I was an Amazon Lex developer for 6 years, probably running contact centers off of it. And so I'm seeing all of the intents out here. I'm seeing that this auto-generated an intent based on the question I chose. Back, England, fall foliage, New Hampshire. And is that the edit button that I was curious about? So obviously this isn't England fall foliage. This is, you know, New Hampshire was the question, but really you could go as broad as fall foliage. It looks like the user are allowed to fine tune those intents before, say, exporting them out to Lex. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, so we just did that, right? And if I want to take that and everything else that you see here and export that file so that you could take that and put it into Lex, or if you already had Lex hooked up, you just want to import them directly from here, you can do that. Just hit that button.
Very cool.
So the other part on Curate, which just kind of rolls into what you're asking, Chris, is this is the area where all the topics and the questions get curated every time they come in. And so it makes it pretty easy for a client or a user to see what's being asked, see the total coverage and confidence score of that given topic, like how good is the data at handling that given topic. And then even so far as like, what was the exact question that somebody asked, and then what did the model generate off of that? And is that, human in the loop, is that fine or is that not fine? We got to make adjustments. And then if, again, we're trying to accelerate a conversational service build, these are all more or less the same question based on IaaS. Let's activate them all and then upload those intents much more quickly than.
So much more, yeah.
Then we have to sit there and we have to play games with the data, right? To get to that point. You don't have to
look
do
at all
that.
of our missed utterances and things like that to find out what did we miss. You're using GenAI to come up with, you're doing prompt generation essentially, which for free, which is nice.
Yeah, you got it.
So when you talk about human in the loop, are you heavily relying on your users and customers to be that human in the loop? And you don't provide that service as part of this,
Relying on the business itself
right?
to be the human in the loop, and then whomever they're turning over that application or service to for people to use, like employees, or if it's in a B2C fashion, like individual consumers, utilization of that then kind of becomes the thing that they rely on. But the true human in the loop from like a solution maintenance standpoint is those data people.
Should be the people who know the data and know
Correct.
that it's right or wrong.
Yes.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yes, that this whole user interface is exactly for those people. You get data health as well in the governance portion of Neuralseek. So you basically get the cumulative knowledge-based coverage and confidence score, like how good or bad is the data that's hooked up to the solution based on what people are looking for and how the model's handling it. We also, and all these charts and graphs populate, update in real time based on what users are doing. And we track the most referenced documents coming back from the knowledge base. So the most frequently used things pop up here. But because we're talking about KB indexes predominantly, not everything is a PDF or some other kind of text-based document. If it's a URL, that's an external web page, intranet site. I hear about SharePoint all the time as something they want to index in a KB. Data that's coming back that's stemming from a URL, these pop up here as well. So it just makes it easy to see what's coming back the most. Like what are the most relied on sources for this solution or for our business based on relevant topics.
So if my data is internal, on that last one, like I saw a couple that said like no title.
Oh yeah.
Or no URL. Is that like my internal documents that aren't published to the public internet? How can I see if my internal documentation, say I have 3 PDFs internally, I want to know, is PDF 1 the source of truth more often than not? I'm basically looking for the URL, but my local file versions. Does that exist?
Yeah, if that's what's hooked up to this and indexed.
So I guess my internal company data wouldn't be at, or would it have my internal documentation URLs?
Yes.
Okay, my internet, okay.
Yeah, just this example, it's all web scrape things.
Got it.
And then external ones, yeah.
Maybe ask the question different ways, or there's an alert when if, say, an internal document is then leaked outside or exposed.
Yeah, there's things that you can do to set up in a solution
Okay.
that would have this involved, that would make it easier
Yeah.
for you. But really, if you're setting up and maintaining the configure portion of this, the risk of that should be fairly minimal.
The only other follow-up to that, dashboards are great. Are these also exportable out to, or et cetera?
There's ways you can do that.
Okay, cool.
There's ways you can do that, but I haven't seen it specifically for this.
Okay,
It's definitely an admin view, but I can show you examples of how people can get text-based outputs, but also get some things in graphs and charts. So I'll show you what that looks like.
yeah, no problem. All good. Thank you.
You're welcome. The intent insights are really the same as the curate tab. It's a 30-day look back period of the total coverage and confidence scores of the knowledge base based on what topics are being asked. And I can slide it any which way I want. I'm looking at what we did today during the meeting, and then I can roll it all the way back to everything that's happened over the last month. And so all this is clickable too. We talk about here's our New England fall foliage in New Hampshire. The coverage isn't so good on that one. Maybe we need to put something in there to bring the knowledge base coverage and confidence up. This is all clickable. So that drops me back into curate where we were before, and then we can do what it is we were doing if we needed to edit end line or just the model flood at one point in time said this needs to go and get rid of that output. We do version history on this as well for users. So basically any type of configuration parameter or change that's made by the business into the solution or into their solution, I should say, the version history pops up here. And so if somebody needed to click on something and see what happened, you can click on that version, you get a timestamp, the person's email or the user's email who did that, and then you see in the backend logic of that instance, well, here's the thing that they changed at whatever point in time. We also do this for our Maestro GenAI workflow runs, and we provide visualization into what's the time it takes to run a workflow, and then what does that translate to in terms of seek requests, because essentially the seek function in Neuralseek is a Maestro template workflow that we built. So every time You hit that, it's basically triggering that workflow on the back end to do the thing it is that we're doing. And then you'll get insights on template runs as well, where's the run from the workflow leaning on the most? Is it the model? Is it something from API, machine learning model? Is it the knowledge base? So this is what that would look like in that case. And then same deal for, oh, no, not the same deal, but we need to talk about this token insight. So that's the cost management piece. All right. Cumulative amount of tokens that your business is consuming in a GenAI application that has this involved. Total cost to the business, it's all broken down, input and output, input tokens per seek, the generated tokens, and then token generation speed, because that plays a factor in how many you consume or not. And then model cost comparison. So we'll highlight in blue what model you are using in a solution, and then we give you other examples of ones in gray, just baseline charges that are out there. The future of this is hybrid and multi, just like cloud has become. As the cost of models go down and become next to nothing for a business to consume, it's going to be solution optimization and performance improvement that really win the day with this. And oh, by the way, can I do that without drastically altering code in a solution? So this is not the end all be all, but this is at least a quick indicator for businesses to say like, we're spending too much money on Claude, for example. It's not doing what we want. Let's go over to GPT-4, for example, and see what happens there. And then I'll show you what that would look like to switch out from a model. So I've talked about this a couple of times. We have a fully customizable content fusion, content creation prompt space called Maestro, pun intended, that technical and non-technical user could use this to, as long as there's enterprise data or the relevant data that you need to execute on a GenAI workflow, the possibilities are fairly limitless for what, even a non-coder could do with whatever data they need to work with on a day-to-day basis. So we have there's a lot to unpack with blocks and buttons and things that you could click and drag and drop and string together to make a workflow. But Chris, to answer your question earlier, this is the area where we integrate with a lot of other data sources that are not just KB indexes. So the big one that enterprises talk to us about are like EDB type connections. Like, can you connect my DB2 or my Postgres, my Oracle, or Snowflake? Obviously, huge one from a cloud standpoint, Oracle. So this is how you would connect those maybe more legacy or like true like hardcore enterprise database services into Neuralseek. It would be calling them through a Maestro workflow here. So that's where you would pull these in. Obviously, you got to provide access and credentials so the two can talk to each other, but it's really all you need to do there. I was talking about SharePoint. Lo and behold, here's our SharePoint integrator. This was not here earlier today. So super cool. Yes, super cool for that. Don't clap for me. I didn't do that, but it's here. So this is where you hook up SharePoint, for example. We have Jira from a support ticket platform standpoint, but ServiceNow is another one that we do integrate into. So I imagine the button click for that will be coming soon. And then Trello, like project management, PMO type stuff, GitHub repos. Slack is a messaging platform too. You can hook up to Google Drives, directly read and write to S3 like you asked me earlier, and then you can even do external web searches. So how this got started is really kind of in the back-end development of the product itself. There are workflows that are executed by some of these other more clickable functions. That's the thing you're actually triggering when you're doing something in Neuralseek. But then it turned into we had clients who said like, hey, I want to use GenAI to calculate first cause of loss for like insurance, for example. Something that maybe you can't do just by clicking buttons in Neuralseek, but you can maybe put together a workflow to do that. And so based on use cases and asks, this turned from a back-end development, here's how we beef up the product, to you could actually have your own kind of like use case creator by using this specific function. And then it turned into, well, not everybody's gonna type it in brackets and, go like HTML type to get there. It needs to be drag and drop and building blocks, for non-technical users. And then it turned into, well, now we got these use cases and common things we've helped develop and that people have asked of us. Why don't we put them in here as examples for people to get started with? They're just like, this is too much, I'm not sure. So everything, well, at least as it stands right now, everything from just a custom RAG workflow to, write me a marketing or, sales email to, here's an email I got, just write me a reply for it, to call prep an executive for an earnings call. I wonder where that one might have come around. Redact PII, write a social media post, even things like math, which models are not very good at doing math on their own. But if you put together the right workflow and logic, yeah, you can do some pretty hefty math using GenAI prompts, dynamic GenAI prompts, basically. And then it turned into maybe people just want to type in what they're looking for in a couple of sentences and get something. So it's normally where I spend my time on some of these lately. So let's test it out and see what it looks like. Let's grab news headlines from two different news sources, summarize the recent vice presidential debate, summarize the key topics that both candidates talked about, and just give them to me in bullet points. So with just a couple of keystrokes, we've got a dynamic GenAI workflow. It's going to do one LLM call, but it's going to scrape two different news outlets. And we're going to do splitting and variable setting. And then there's my text of what I want. When you actually do this, we're going to run it through an LLM. And let's see what happens. There you go. Interesting, no headlines provided by Fox News. That's funny. So just as an example, a couple of seconds, a couple of keystrokes, then just evaluate. Then you're running dynamic GenAI workflows without having to script anything. And again, as long as you're calling on either the data you got access to, or you're calling on an external source that can actually pull back what you're looking for, just tell it what you want, and there you go. So you get the inline output here, but then you can also get the text base, the HTML. Then you can export this into a Word or a PDF. If you needed to do a report or a summary or something and send it off to somebody, you can run the workflow and extract it from there just like that.
Is there a way to, let's say, offload the templates and import them? I'm thinking from like a system integrator point of view, right? I come to work with a new client. I have some workflows already pre-built. I want to bring them with me into their instance. Neuralseek.
The best way I think to do that is at whatever point in time you want to bring that with you to that instance, you download the point in time config file of that, whatever that instance is, and then you pop that into it. That's what we also tell people if they're like, maybe I don't want to run this hourly, I want to like do this for a period of time, turn it off, and then cut it back on later, but I don't want to lose what workflows I built. Okay, take the point in time config file, and then you don't have to deal with any of the rebuild. You just pop it right in and pick up where you left off.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, man.
No problem. Let's see. So let's go through the configure aspect of this. You see a lot of drop-down menus here. There's no coding involved in any of this. It's really just click down, drop-down menus, sliders, buttons, things of that nature. But the ones I want to show that I think are, or at least, are keys to getting started with this is first, your knowledge base connection. I said we have Elasticsearch for this demo, but here's other knowledge bases we already support integrations to today. So yeah, we do Elastic App Search, Elasticsearch, OpenSearch and Kendra, and then KB for Bedrock here. We also do things like Pinecone and Melvis. You can do virtual KB as well, and then you could even do no knowledge base, but that's more of a manual document upload, or like we were looking at before, calling a EDB from somewhere else, and you're running more workflow based things that way. So all you would do if you had a KB index is you would click the one here, then you just put in the endpoint, the API key, and whatever it's named. And that's how you bring a knowledge base online, at least within Neuralseek. And then the LLM details. So this is the area without any code that you can take the credentials of a large language model or multiple and pop them into Neuralseek to be able to use. And so it looks like this. Like I said, we have Claude 3 Haiku running in this demo. All we need to do to add this LLM is basically click this blue button. You see all the large language model providers we have integration points to. So I mean, it's all the big ones, but we're talking about AWS for this case. So Bedrock, click on Bedrock. We support all the models as part of the platform today. Pick the one that you have. You hit the add button. And then it pops up like this little card right here in the LLM details. And all you do after that, you have the access key and the secret key. Pop those in. You subscribe to it. Put the region where you subscribe to Bedrock in. And then you set this little test button. Test button came back green. That's all I need to do to plug a model into Neuralseek to now start doing some cool stuff with it. Didn't take any coding whatsoever to make that happen. The other thing that we're doing that I think is particularly helpful for businesses is not everybody knows what they're getting into with a given large language model. It's just like, I heard of it, or I know it exists, like whatever, like I'll use it, but most people don't know. And so what we do is all these cards for LLMs have LLM functions. So these are all GenAI things that a business could use with an LLM within Neuralseek to do stuff. And because not every model is good at doing the same exact things, we've got enough back-end logic in the software that based on what you have, what you plug in, this auto-populates. And so we go ahead and tell you like, all right, you're using Claude V3 for the GenAI functions that are possible in Neuralseek. These are all the things that you can do, or that you'll be allowed to do. In this case, can't do table understanding, so that's all grayed out. So it works very well to at least let businesses know this is what you're getting into for whatever model that you may have chosen. But then, well, what if I want to switch functionality between another model? I've also got GPT 3.5 just sitting here. Maybe I want to run seek requests with GPT 3.5, for example. I check the box off of the seek function for Claude, and I put it on for GPT 3.5. That's all I needed to do. So now I switched a GenAI function to that model without having to do anything. Let's see if this works. Put me on the spot here. Thank you. Thank you, GPT 3.5. It did it, but it's very concise in its output based on whatever the parameter is here in Neuralseek. So basically the equivalent of being like, yes, it does. But you scroll down, there's all the source information there to support that. So that's just an example of how easy it is. Like if you wanted to tune your solution, not tune the model, but like tune the solution's performance for whatever reason, it's button clicks. You'll switch back and forth between a given model. So let me go back. Take this off. The other two areas in configure that I think are very useful are the PII handling and the governance and guardrails. So this is the area where, talking about being able to keep PII based outputs from happening, or maybe even strike the input from being executed. Within Neuralseek, you have the ability to do nothing, but also auto detect, flag, mask, hide, and maybe even delete inputs or potential outputs that may have PII in them on impact. And I have no reference of that in curate or anything like that. So, you could be as loose or as stringent as you'd like from a sensitive data standpoint. There's a bunch of regex logic within Neuralseek that's basically a bunch of predefined PII detectors that are individual button clicks by going through this master button here. But we've also run into situations where of the 15 or 20 that are in there, the client or user says, but we have this thing or that thing that's a PII or indicator for us. That's fine. Put your own regex in there for whatever that PII detector is, and Neuralseek will be able to pick up on it and be like, oh, this is sensitive to you, so we're gonna auto detect, flag, mask, hide, delete, that related stuff.
Can you have a global workflow setting? So I know that there's other third parties that have PII redaction. Hypothetically, if you wanted to use a third party out there and you wanted every response to go out to that third party before coming back, is that workflow, that's like, say there was a REST API to do that? Are you able to have a workflow that applies to every response the user gets back?
In terms of anything specific?
So if I wanted to every response that comes back, I want to send to my MPI service to filter out before my user at the seek screen sees the response. Am I able to configure that?
That's a good question. I need to go dig into that and let you know. It's a really good question though. And then the last key here is the governance and guardrails. So this is where those minimum confidence and warning confidence thresholds get set up. Basically, at what point is Neuralseek going to cut the model off from trying to do its thing and do the right thing, I guess, and the users speak. So this is where you do it. And it's basically a slider from 0 to 100. How fully enabled or disabled do you want the confidence to be? And then if a RAG output does not hit the minimum number you've set up, what's your warning pretext going to be to alert the data management people or the user that we're kind of veering on the edge of what is remotely retrievable based on our data, let you know that not so sure or may not have anything here, and not just let the model run wild and give you some misinformation on something that may not be there. We house all of our API documentation directly in the product as well. So if you want to call a particular GenAI function within Neuralseek into some other application or service, it's all right in here. I mean, in essence, Neuralseek's a huge API with other APIs in it, so it makes sense to just give all that as part of the solution. Really, if there's as long as there's something that supports an API call or webhook, the odds are pretty good. You can tether this into it without a whole lot of effort. And then we also hear a lot about there are businesses out there who are building their own models. Like, okay, well, you don't support whatever it is we're building. Like, how can I bring it with me to the solution? So we have instructions on how to bring your own model outside of what you may have paid for, but if you just build it homegrown from scratch, how to be able to plug that in to Neuralseek here. And then a couple of virtual agent integrations as well, just to make it easy to, like you were talking about before, Chris, pop that in and get it going much faster than building everything from scratch there.
Perfect this time.
Better late than never. If you want to get more information on what all we're doing and, stay up with the latest, things that we're doing to Neuralseek and just what we're doing out in the AWS world or our business world, all of that. We do run monthly product enhancement update calls. The registration for Zoom for that is embedded in this presentation, so I can give that to you, Chris, and Chris, you'd be able to share with everybody who's in person as well as virtual, so you can actually access that stuff. We also do specific technical training for AWS users and keep it very focused to the AWS only native services that would pair with Neuralseek. The webinar series is embedded in there as well to register for. All this is free, by the way, and we also run that on a monthly basis. Right now, we're at about 2-week product development cycles for Neuralseek. I got caught off guard in a public scenario with a Maestro data connector that wasn't even there earlier today, that being SharePoint, which that just goes to show how frequently our dev team is cranking out feature iterations and evolutions to the product as this, the space evolves. And then I think the best place, if you're not going to go to our website or the Neuralseek specific website, is just follow us on LinkedIn, right? We're pretty active out there doing a lot of marketing and the latest on what on earth we're doing and where we're at. So it's probably a good place to get the latest on us. And then if y'all want to connect with me directly and talk to me about anything you want to know or anything in particular with Neuralseek, that's my LinkedIn. I found that QR code capability a couple weeks ago. So I think that makes it easy to just connect with people who are not here in person or who just want to connect with me after the fact this evening. So I'll leave that for a second.
And all of these slides and this presentation will be on YouTube. We'll have it shared out. So if you guys wanted to see a specific slide and put it, we'll have more access to that after the fact as well.
So I checked the staging Neuralseek.com where you were running the demo from. Looks like I can just sign up for an account with my email address and get access to that.
To the staging environment, no, I mean, that's internal to
Oh, okay.
us, but there is a free trial available on AWS Marketplace for it. And, if we need to have a conversation about private offer, more of a B2B standpoint, I'm responsible for those as well. So we can talk about that too. If you would like, you can leave me and our company some feedback, for better or for worse. Every little bit of it helps us improve. It's good feedback on maybe what directions we're going right in the market, or maybe things to consider if our team's not already doing that. So don't hesitate to let us know what you like or what you dislike about any of this. That's all I got for you guys this evening. Thank you very much for tuning in.
Appreciate it, man.
You're welcome.
Thank you. So for folks in the room, if you don't mind, in the spirit of feedback, awspub.org/survey. Again, we're seeking feedback not only on tonight's presentation, but also on how we're hosting the event, things we can do better, always looking for opportunities to improve. Any feedback we get related to you, your presentation, we will happily share with you. So that's, I see a 404 on your.
I think I said, did you put it up?
It's survey/survey.
Ah.
Yeah, awspub.org/survey. Hopefully no 404s. And for the folks online,
Screen test.
for the folks online, we will spin a wheel. For everyone who provides feedback, you're in a race to win, I think a $50 AWS compute credit. So for the folks online, we'll spin the wheel, and if you win, we'll shoot you an email with that AWS compute credit.
A little bit of extra hands-on learning. If you guys are gonna go track down that free trial on Marketplace, or maybe you get a private offer from us and you're able to play around. So these are publicly available, but they're hands-on learning labs to take you through basically getting started with Neuralseek on AWS and connecting it to a knowledge base. You'll learn about Seek and Maestro and learn how to connect it to a virtual agent as well. So you basically build your own little demo environment, and proof is in the pudding. You can do and see some of the things that I've shown you guys this evening. So that's also in the slides that will be sent out for after the presentation is concluded. So that's it right there. That's all I got. So thank you guys again.
Encore.